Welcome into episode 183. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at by CA Simmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. Christian, UCF's highest rated recruiting class in history, signed today, Wednesday.
You know what's funny is this is the third straight year we've gotten to do a podcast about how UCF's signed their highest rated class in program history. They just
Some are asking if the coaching staff is using the Pegasus Podcast as a recruiting tool.
Interesting.
Their recruiting has gotten really good ever since we started a podcast.
Since the Pegasus Podcast began, UCF has signed 12 four-star recruits. And before the Pegasus Podcast, I think they'd signed like 15 in their whole history. So ask yourself what's really going on.
The coaches are telling them, like, listen, there's this podcast. They're going to talk about you if you come here. So
I love the idea of, like, 6 months ago, the coaches were sitting in Kylan Fox's living room, and he was like, listen, I really want to come to UCF. It's just FSU. They're offering me a lot of money. And Gus leaned in, looked him in the eye and said, but does FSU have the Pegasus Podcast? And Kylan Fox said, Coach, I'm in. And that was how they put this class together. But yeah, this is genuinely one of those things that we're going to look back on as one of the more pivotal moments in UCF program history. And I hope that fans understand that. I think it's kind of funny that since, recruiting kind of happens in waves, I feel like fans have gotten really used to the idea that they were going to end up signing all these 4 stars, and they held on to all but one. They had 9 4-stars committed, and they ended up getting 8 of them signed, which is just crazy. And I hope the average fan understands how monumental of a shift this is for UCF football and what the team can accomplish. Their recruiting is light years ahead of even the vast majority of the Big 12. It is crazy that they are here already.
Yeah, we're that excited about the recruiting class that we jumped right into our first topic immediately.
I know. I skipped the 5-star
question. We'll get to that, and then we'll talk more about this recruiting class, and we'll talk a little bit about the bowl, which apparently, according to the poll results that Christian ran, none of you care about the bowl. So
nope. It's actually really fitting.
Of you do.
After I just completely blew off the 5-star review question when Jalen Hayward committed, that then for the day that he actually signs, I once again do the same thing.
All right, well, let's do this one because it's kind of actually ties in a little bit because they're recruiting really well, and they recruited well in the last couple of years, and the results hopefully will catch up eventually. But this question is kind of about that. This comes from, penalty kick. I don't know why I read that so weird, but
because penalty is spelled like a cup of tea. Hey, I'm drinking tea right now in honor of this question. Kick. Definitely not a coincidence.
This says, I'm going to read the first part just because I like when people say nice things about us. They love the show. I'm a legacy UCF alum like you, Christian, and grew up going to UCF games with parents back in the Citrus Bowl. Love the insight and opinions on all things UCF athletics. Thanks, penalty kick. All right, let's talk about... No, I'm kidding. The question is, what is the ceiling win total for Gus as the head coach? Do you see him winning more than 10 games in this conference? I love Gus, but don't see him getting us more than 10 with inconsistencies from week to week. Is that reason to move on from him if he gives us another 6 to 7 win season the next year and no improvements in 2024 and 2025? I love him as the CEO, but hope to see more improvements in the consistency on a week-to-week basis. No idea who we would go to if we decided to move on in the next year or two. Thanks again for the weekly content.
I feel like we could have spaced these questions better because picking a question this down on like the day of celebration feels sad. But hey, that's the deal, is whatever question you guys send in, we will answer it. So here we go into whether or not UCF should fire Gus Malzahn as they land their best class ever. Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, please, you go ahead.
It ties in because of the comment about him being the CEO, because they've been able to get these recruiting classes largely because of him and the staff that he has. And then the results on the field. I mean, this year was 6-6. We said that was the goal all along, was get to a bowl, was Big 12 transition. But it is fair. It's worth asking, are the results on the field going to catch up to recruiting? So what were you going to say?
I was going to say that I've had this argument with like a couple people now, but were they actually inconsistent this year? It felt like they were not. It felt like they just weren't that good. Like, what was I mean, I'm looking at, you talk about Gus Malzahn's offense. Their scoring in Big 12 play was 31 points, 35, 22, 29, 28, 28. 45, 23, 27. That's a pretty narrow range. It felt like they were doing the same stuff every week.
I don't know. Yeah, it's a good point. I think the only thing you can really say is like maybe that they had that 45-3 win over Oklahoma State, then came right out the next week and lost. I guess that would be like the one really. The thing
they
is,
lost
like,
by a point on the road.
I wasn't consistent. They were consistent for 5 games, and that they lost 5 games in a row. That's consistent streak right there.
Yes, they were.
So yeah, I don't know. I feel like this inconsistency thing goes more back to 2022.
2022, and that was really, I felt like they lived and died by JRP. Like, that's where that inconsistency came from for me, is there were some games where he was, back then, before Darren Henshaw fixed him, there were some games where he was a superstar. There were some games where he was genuinely the worst player to ever suit up for UCF, and you just never knew which way it was going to go.
I've said it before, I think, on the podcast, but how much of a shame is it that Darren Henshaw fixed him? He was banged up for a lot of this year, so we got to see like parts of this new version of JRP, and now he's leaving. Now he's gone.
Yeah, because basically all the games he's been healthy for, which I guess he hasn't even been 100% healthy, and he said that, but all the games that he's been decently healthy for, he's been good. And I think a full season of healthy JRP, but it's kind of a, what's the term for, what am I looking for? Like an impossible scenario. There's a term for that. I'm not sure what it is.
I don't, is it a paradox?
I went to, maybe a paradox. I went to school for journalism, so don't ask me about words. That you talk about, I wish we could have had healthy JRP all year, but healthy JRP plays the way he does and gets hurt. So it's, you never actually could have had healthy JRP because the injuries are just part of the journey. So it is.
I think that might be a paradox.
I think paradox was what I was looking for. I think that's ringing a bell. It's the
whether it's right or not.
The John Rice paradox. That's what we're gonna refer to him as from now on. Anyway, we can actually answer the question. We just completely went off the rails. I want to address part of this question. That was the
John Rice paradox, JRP.
Paradox. Okay, I want to address part of the question because I feel like fans need to. This is going to be an adjustment in the coming years, and I'm worried about how they react to it. But one of the lines in this question was, "Do you see him winning more than 10 games in the conference?" I have to, and this is going to be. I think people will figure it out just as we move into this new era where UCF's in a 16-team conference and there's a 12-team playoff. 10 game, like the world where UCF does a Peach Bowl like 2017 where they go 13-0 or they go 12-0, those days are over because college football just doesn't work that way anymore. Conferences are too deep now. Too many games against Power 5 teams are played. Like you look at the 16-team Big 12 where every single team in that league, all 16 of them really care about football, really spend in football, and are all pretty similar levels of both floor and ceiling. There's not a lot of room for UCF to ever put together a team where they're just going to be steamrolling everyone and going 13-0. But they don't have to. I think that 10-2 is probably about the ceiling now, and 10-2 is also going to get you into the 12-team playoff if you're playing for or win the Big 12 title game. So it's just in this new era, it's going to feel a little more NFL-ish where your record isn't, being perfect with your record isn't going to be as much of a thing because it's just not as achievable anymore. So from that perspective, no, I don't think that Gus is ever going to have them going 11-1 and 12-0 all the time because I don't think that's possible in modern college football.
Yeah. Yeah, so then if you reframe the question then as, is UCF going to be, what was it consistently? I don't know if they're ever consistently going to be a playoff team, so I don't know if anyone else outside of the Powers are going to be consistent playoff contenders, but is Gus the kind of guy that can get UCF to that playoff? That maybe is more of like how we can reframe this question.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
Maybe, I don't know. It's fair to ask.
I don't feel, I mean, it's just sort of weird because we've been talking about for a few weeks now about how 2024 is looking dicey as a season, but now I don't feel that way as much as I did before, mainly just because we still don't know. So this could all go out the window, but there's a lot of talk about Kobe Hudson returning, about RJ Harvey returning, maybe Javon Baker returning. They've been recruiting really well. So far, they've been doing pretty solid in the portal. So I'm feeling a little differently about next year. I think that it's going to come down to who they get as quarterback. KJ Jefferson is the current target. We just don't have time for that on this podcast, so we'll get with you next week about that one. So I don't know. Part of this question was if we go through 2024 and 2025 with no improvement, like let's say 6-6 next year, 6-6 again in 2025. Yeah, that's a problem. I also just don't really buy that happening, especially with the way they're recruiting right now. Like they're adding so much top level talent. If they add talent like that every year, it's going to be difficult to not get better. Like he would have to be intentionally sabotaging the team, which some believe he kind of does to stop them from being good with that level of talent. So
intentionally sabotaging or just calling plays, whichever one you want to say he's doing.
My favorite thing from this season has been the fan conspiracy that Gus is still calling plays. That we haven't talked about that one enough. Which I don't know. I'll let you know. A couple of games in the season, even I was like,
yeah,
seems similar, but he is definitely not calling plays.
Well, I think what we ended up on was Henshaw's calling the plays, but he's just calling them from Gus Malzahn's playbook.
That's the thing is I kind of in the offseason when Gus was like, I'm handing over the reins, I'd kind of imagine that Henshaw was going to be in complete control of the offense. It really wasn't. It's still very much Gus's offense. I think he still has a pretty heavy hand in the in-week planning, but I think once the actual game comes around, it's Henshaw who's making those decisions.
Yeah. And I don't know. It's interesting because I've run into the problem the last couple of, I don't know if I say days or weeks, whenever I've been thinking about UCF lately. Whenever I've been thinking about UCF lately, I've been running this problem where I don't know what I expect in 2024 and 2025. Like I was always like, get to a bowl game in your year one in the Big 12. I don't really know what to expect or like what to like say is the bar next year. Like I don't have enough information. I like to see, yeah. And I just, even once we get information, I'm not going to know. Like I don't know until there's a few years probably of just witnessing with my eyes what UCF is like in the Big 12. I won't really know where they like stand in front of like we know where they probably could be or where we could project them to be in the future. And that's like near, I mean, it's going to be a league with a lot of parity. So like they're always going to be probably in the mix at least a little bit. but I don't know where their place really is going to be or where I'm going to ever expect them to be until like they're there for a few years, and then I know, all right, like that's kind of where they are. That's kind of like caliber of Big 12 program they are. So like I don't know what the next few years are going to bring, and I guess once they happen, that's when I'll be able to make my decision on whether or not they're trending in the right direction under Gus. It's also the whole thing about if he's going to retire or not. Like however long he plans on coaching, that's another element of this whole thing. So
The
yeah.
truth is, by the time we're figuring out what UCF should be in the Big 12 is going to be about the time that Gus is ready to hang it up. So I don't think the
Oh,
judgment day is ever going to really come on. I mean, I do think people need to understand that there's a fantasy that exists about what UCF is capable of. And I was guilty of this too. When 2017 and 2018 happened, UCF basically just stopped losing. And we should have looked at those 2 seasons as, wow, this was a lot of things coming together at a perfect time. It was UCF having a lot of their best players ever on the same roster. It was a lot of breaks going their way in specific games and just for their culture and for players they got on their roster. What a special time. That's how we should have looked at it. And we more looked at it like, wow, this is what UCF is now. And this is what they should always be. And all these years later at this point, it still feels like everyone's kind of waiting for that to come back. Year to year, top level elite consistency, I don't know if it's possible in the Big 12. I know UCF is currently recruiting to try to make it possible. They are out recruiting the hell out of everyone in their conference, but you look at Baylor, who won the league a few years ago, then fell off. Oklahoma State, they came within literally a yard of winning the conference. They fall off the year after. Now they're back in the Big 12 title game. It's just, there's too much parity in the league to be good or not to be good, but to be elite every single year. Every team is going to go through waves and ebbs and flows of maybe UCF's in the 7 to 8 win range most years. And then maybe once a class, like once every 3 or 4 years, they break out for that 10, 11 win campaign. Then they come back down. That's probably the ceiling, to be honest. And I hope fans are okay with that, because if you're not, then you're just out of touch with the way college football is moving, because the alternative just isn't really possible, where they're just going to steamroll this very good conference every year.
My prediction is that I don't know if it's about most, but a large section of UCS fan base is out of touch with that and is going to expect them to win 10 or 11 games every year. So that's my prediction.
Well, it's going to get toxic because next year it's going to be so weird, because next year the 12-team playoff is here. And I think that basically, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that of the 16 teams in the Big 12, I believe that probably all 16 fan bases are going to go into most seasons thinking we could do it. We can make the playoff. Just got to win the conference or get close to win the conference. And that's going to make the seasons where UCF doesn't achieve that so toxic, because now every season you're going to go into it believing you have a shot.
Yeah, which is fun, but also, again, like you said, toxic. So yeah, I think it was a good question. I think we answered it, I guess.
Yep.
I think we answered it, right? We talked a lot about it. I know that.
I'm sure we did.
All right, let's jump into National Signing Day and this recruiting class. UCF signing 8 blue chip recruits, and you can rattle off all the stats that I know you probably want to rattle off that you've probably been tweeting, and I enjoy all of them. So
I've been having a very good day. This is a historic day, guys, and so where things stand right now, and is where they're probably going to come close to finishing up, is UCF has the number 32 class in the nation. Their previous high ever was number 50. That was last year's class. They have the number 3 class in the Big 12, and they have more blue chip signees than any other Big 12 team by a lot. And the reason there are a couple teams ahead of them is it's Texas Tech and TCU. Texas Tech just has a genuinely really good class, and they have a 5-star. TCU just signed more players than UCF, and the 247 ratings takes class size into account a lot. Of all the teams in the country, UCF is one of just 23 that signed 8 or more blue chip prospects. Just 23. And the vast majority of those programs are in the new SEC and new Big Ten, which is basically where all the brands have consolidated. Outside of those conferences, the only teams that have signed that many in this class are UCF, FSU, Clemson, and Miami. That's the territory that UCF is currently in. I really can't overstate how incredible this class is. And I know that we've been talking about this class for 6 months, but it finally putting pen to paper and getting those guys in, this is crazy. It's crazy that they've been able to do this so quickly.
well, that's the thing, because on the day, like on the day, there was a lot of crazy movement around college football, and there wasn't much of that for UCF, and it was nice. Like I think with all these guys, when they committed, we're like, wow, like what a get this could be, like what a get this might be, like as long as he signs, as long as that's always the caveat when you get a big commit or any commit. And they got to signing day, and all these guys signed except for one, which was one that everyone was expecting in like the last couple of weeks or so. And just to see, like, so these guys that it's fun. It's always fun on signing day, because these guys commit at such different times. You're like, oh yeah, like you're excited about them for a few days, then you might forget about them for a little bit until you look at recruiting again. And then they like all the graphics pop up just in a stream on Gus and on UCF's Twitter, and you're looking at the list now. It's like all these guys have signed their letter of intent, and it's worth getting excited about again. Like it's like you're excited individually about all of them, and then the day comes, you're like, look at this like group as a whole, could be really special.
And it's so funny because they wrapped it up at what, like 8 a.m. I
It
usually during
was
signing day, it's going on throughout the day and players are having signing ceremonies. Literally, I think I'd have to check, but I think by 8:30 a.m. or 9 a.m., all of UCF's commits were signed. It was crazy. And then I just got to relax
so
all day. I got to watch Florida's class go up in flames. It was really fun. I had a good time.
that was the funny thing. It's like I knew it was signing day, but I kind of just forget every year how signing day works. So there's just all these constant stream of tweets. So like I woke up this morning was on the radio for my weekly thing at like 7:30. And I'm like, I'm
Should
getting
you
ready to
explain
do
more
that.
what that is? Because I don't know how many of our listeners know what that
Oh,
means.
I don't know. Yeah, so I do a radio hit in Tampa every week for Bucks stuff with Pewter Report. So yeah, there's that. And so I'm in my car getting ready to like take the phone call and do that, talk 15 minutes, whatever it usually is. And I'm getting like Gus notifications on my phone. And I'm like, what? I'm like, oh, that's right. Like these guys are literally, and I forget too that like they're in high school, so school starts at like 7 in the morning or
Yep.
7:20 in the morning. So they're signing like that early. And I'm like, what's going on? And then I remember, let's see, he tweeted his last blank is a night tweet at it was 8 hours at 8:50 a.m. So yeah, just before 9 o'clock.
8:50 a.m.
And everyone else, even into like the 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock hour, was like losing commits to other places. And yeah, it was just not a
Just
drama filled day for UCF.
as a college football enjoyer, I appreciated it because then I just got to sit back. Because today's been like a wild signing day for college football as a whole. There's been a lot of surprise flips and players going elsewhere and all this crazy stuff. Like the story of the day has really been Florida's class completely falling apart. So if you're a Florida hater, which if you're listening to this, there's a good chance you are. Good day to be a Florida hater. So it was just fun for me. I don't know how that gets decided. Did the recruits come together and say, "Hey, let's just knock this out," or did the coaches
I
be
don't
like,
know.
"Please just sign early this morning"? Because
Because it
it's
seems
very
like it's usually
unusual.
more sporadic. Like, because it usually depends
Yeah.
on the high school, like when they do their signing ceremony, unless they were all like, I'll do the signing ceremony like as like whatever it's in the afternoon or whatever, but I'll just send in my letter early. I don't know.
So
Maybe
that's
it was
what they
a
did because I saw some stuff on Instagram that some of these players were then because a lot of schools it's like they have 4 or 5 guys going D1 or wherever and
yeah,
they do a signing ceremony where they all sign together
yeah,
and throughout like the day I was seeing stuff later in the day about photos of some of these kids at table signing so I guess they just sent their letters in this morning and then
probably, yeah.
which that was smart on UCF to do that because listen it's you never know I mean we literally saw guys today that no one had any idea they were going to flip and then an hour before they're supposed to turn in their letter oh they're going somewhere else so that
Well,
nice
also,
stress-free day.
when you think about it from a logistical standpoint, especially with this like how this signing day in December has become such a big thing, UCF's coaching staff is in Tampa now
Yeah.
doing it with bowl practices. So the fact that it might have been a coaching thing where it was like, all right, let's just get these in early so that we can go out and have practice and not like because it is. I feel like it's a long undertaking for a lot of coaching staffs. I don't know. I guess maybe it's not possible everywhere because it's not like if that was the case, everyone would do that because a lot of teams are preparing for bowls right now. But I guess if whether it was a UCF decision or just it worked out that way, like it was smart because yeah, they got it out of the way before 9 a.m. Got a couple of transfer commits later in the day, but they had their bowl practice and went about their day. We still don't have a uniform combo, do we? Realizing
We
that wasn't
don't.
part of our day.
I don't know if UCF just forgot or if they're just being mean to me. I'm not sure because usually it's 2 days before the game and the game is
Yeah,
on
maybe they're
Friday.
just
So I
gonna
thought
do
we
it
were doing it
Thursday,
today.
true to like what it normally is, but I don't
I
know.
don't like that because I want a full 48 hours to think about what it's going to look like. Like I like the hype of oh wow, what it's going to look like on the field. I don't want just
Yeah.
24 hours to. I'm driving into Tampa tomorrow because I am covering the game and if I'm in Tampa before it drops, I'm just gonna like go there and find them and be like I want to see it. Like show me the combo
When
right
you
now
say go
because
there, where do you mean?
wherever they
Like,
wherever they have the uniform, I don't know.
you should know where they are all the time.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, what else do you want to kind of get into? Do you want to get into these guys like individually, or how do you really want to go about this?
Like, I don't know if we have time to do
We don't
individually
have
because
time to
it's a
go
large
each
class.
one, but
I think one thing I do want to hit on, and then we can talk about some guys individually, is some of the guys we're most excited for. Is one thing I do want to say is that I've seen some stuff on social media about, and I just kind of want to talk about it a little bit about fans saying things like, "Wow, we built this program with like 2 stars and 3 stars, and stars don't matter, and blah 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 blah." And I get that because that's been UCF's line for a long time, and the bottom line at the end of the day is stars absolutely they matter. They absolutely do. The problem is that a lot of people who view college football from a more national perspective take them as gospel and take them
yeah,
as absolutes. They say
it
team
should be
A
more stars aren't everything.
start think yes, that is the perfect way to phrase it. Because most national people will look at it as when they're talking about games in season, well, team A has signed 32 blue chip prospects in the last 4 classes, and team B has signed 19. So that means team A is better. And that's the entire conversation. That's unhealthy. But the thing that you have to look at when it comes to stars and specifically blue chip prospects, where that's 4 stars and 5 stars, is hit rate. And depending on the position, when you're talking about a blue chip prospect, the hit rate of them turning into a good starter or star is anywhere from 40% to 60%, depending on the position. So in years past, when UCF, which for much of their history would probably sign maybe 1 or 2 4-stars every few years, the hit rate meant that you have a pretty low shot at one of them actually turning into a good player. If you're going by like a 50% hit rate, which is about the average, then yeah, maybe once every 5 years, you have one who turns into a good player. When you look at this class, where UCF signed 8 of them, you apply that same 50% hit rate, and that means that odds are they're probably going to have around 4 or 5 of these guys who go on to be very good starters and possibly even stars. And that's what makes this class so crazy, because none of the other Big 12 teams are signing that many guys. So UCF's chance of getting these stars is so much higher. On top of that, what I'm very curious to see going forward is, was this class just everything happened perfectly, or is UCF actually going to sustain at this level? Because we talked about our 5-star review question, can UCF win all these games? If they're sustaining at this level, like every class they are signing 7 to 10 4-stars, and you talk about, you just start stacking those prospects, more and more of them are going to hit, and that's how you start out talenting a lot of the teams on your schedule every year. Because like I said, the Big 12 just isn't recruiting this way. None of them do, and none of them really even have historically.
Yeah, I mean, it's just giving yourself a chance, and I don't want to say casting a wide net, because these players are kind of rare to find because not everyone's finding them. But it's like you do that every class. You have, say, eight or nine. Let's do 8, so this is the even number, and say 50% of them every year hit. So then you start doing that every year. You have, all right, 4 players from this class, 4 players from the next class, and like by the end of those 3 years, you have 12 to 12, 13, 14 players. And those are just like the 14 like high level players. There's also these other guys, like maybe they're not going to turn into stars, but they're reliable enough starters. Like that's how you build a program. I want to say that's how you build a program. There's different ways to build a program, but like that's how you get to that level where you are really having this much success year in and year out, and you're not having, and it becomes cyclical sometimes. Like it's not a thing where it's like, if this isn't happening every year, it's like happens a couple years in a row, you build up a really good team. That's where you get the scenario where it's like maybe they're 8 wins each year, whatever, and then there's one year where they're 10 or 11. Then it probably falls back down until they can start to build that back up again. But I don't know. You hope they can sustain it, but it's hard. It's hard to imagine. It's just crazy that like we're here at this point, because I don't think anyone ever really thought UCF was going to be at this level this quickly.
It's the this quickly part to me. I mean, we talked about how I even remember when one of their last years, it must have been 2021, because that was the only year that, well, 2022 too, but in 2021, we knew that was their last year in the AAC. And I remember having the thought, because UCF always recruits around the top of the AAC. They'd always be first, second, third. Heupel, it fell off a little bit, but they're always up there. I remember thinking to myself a couple years ago, like, wow, I wonder how long it's going to be before, or if they ever can really start recruiting at the top of the power, at the top of the Big 12. Because remember, the old discussion we used to have was their main goal needed to be keeping all the local P5 talent who leave the state to go to like Wake Forest or Iowa or wherever, because they say they're a P5 player, keeping those guys home. The fact that we are 1 year in to the Big 12 and UCF has just skyrocketed past that and is now out recruiting so much of the conference. I mean, it's a 16-team conference. This includes Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado. UCF's third. And you can make a case that their class is better than TCU, who's ranked ahead of them. I mean, I'm just looking at 4-star signees and 5-star signees. UCF has 8. Texas Tech has 6. Texas Tech has a really good class too. TCU has 4. Kansas has 3. Arizona State and West Virginia each have 1. Arizona has 2. Cincy and BYU have 1. Kansas State has 1. Iowa State and Oklahoma State and Baylor have none. Houston has 1. And that's why it's already cool for one class. But if UCF does this over a few years, they're just going to have so much more talent than almost everyone they're playing. And that's when we can start revising what this program can actually be, especially in a 12-team era where every year from now on, if you win your conference, you are in the college football playoff. And you might even be in a couple years if you don't win your conference. That's where that's the era we're moving into.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And you mentioned West Virginia having 1, and that 1 was a previous UCF commit. That was the one who didn't sign, who everyone kind of at this point knew was going to happen. It was going to be a flip. Was Rick Darius, Day Farmer, a wide receiver.
Yep.
I mean, tough to lose them, but like you have, like it's one of those things where it's like, oh, now they only have 8. Like it's tough because you like all these guys individually and you want as many as possible, but it's like they go from 9 blue chips to 8, and you're like, it's not, it's I don't know. It's one thing if like that was your prized recruit, and he was a prized recruit, but they have a lot of prized recruits, so that's where you can kind of cope a little easier.
And like you said, as far as prized recruits, he's not even their only 4-star wide receiver. They also signed Burdell Richardson, and wide receivers. I'm never going to say no to a 4-star prospect, but wide receivers also they're on the lower end of hit rates just because that's a hard position to evaluate. And also, UCF is a Power 5 team in Central Florida. They're never going to not have good receivers. Florida is skill player capital. They'll be fine. But I tweeted this earlier because I thought it was so interesting. Imagine if in like 2018 or 2019, I told you, hey, a few years from now, on signing day, West Virginia is going to flip a 4-star recruit from UCF. You'd be like, yeah, that tracks. But you look at what actually happened, and it's West Virginia flipped a 4-star recruit from UCF. That is now West Virginia's only 4-star in this class. UCF isn't really that bothered by it since they have 8 others, including another player at that position. I just, the fact that they are already here is crazy. I feel like we're almost desensitized to it. I mean, when we were talking about them joining the Big 12, this is beyond the dream scenario that we talked about. I really just, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, that's what's cool. That's what's cool about you and I and the fan base that's been here for longer. I know you've been here longer than I have, but like all of us being here pre Big 12 and just kind of pre like this era, we don't really lose sight of it because it is crazy how much they've risen. Like other fans who are newer or, kind of just coming into it now, whatever it is, it's kind of like, yeah, this is what they're supposed to do. Like, why is this such a big deal? But like people who have been following them for longer know why it's a big deal and know how big of a deal it is. So I guess that's like and always going to be a cool thing for just you and I and whoever is like, they could be in the Big 12 for 15 years or whatever. And even still, it's like, hey, remember like back when this happened pre Big 12, like we're always going to have that where it's like, think about how far this program's come.
Do you remember cool for the 2017 class going into 2017? When they signed Cordarian Richardson, one single 4-star, not even like a super highly rated 4-star, and we at a running back too, which isn't even a very high hit rate, and we were like, oh my god, it was like earth-shattering news. I think he chose UCF over Maryland at the time.
I think so,
and it was just like it was headline news across Orlando, and the fact that was what, like 7 years ago, and they're already at the point where I don't even know. I should go look up where Cordarian would have ranked in this class. That'd actually be funny to look back on, but. And it's little things like it's not just the players they're getting, it's the teams they're beating out to get them. I mean, Kylan Fox, Mississippi State came on hard with Lebby as the new head coach, and they were able to fend off Mississippi State. Last year, Auburn came after Braden Marshall at the buzzer. They fended off Auburn. Braden Marshall turned out to be a very good true freshman. Florida put everything they had into getting John Walker, couldn't prime away. He became a very good true freshman for UCF. They flipped Isaiah Nixon, who we haven't seen yet this year, but maybe he pans that down the road. They flipped him from Florida on signing day. They are going head to head with SEC teams for very good players who are priority for these teams. Let's also not forget pre-Mississippi State, Kylan Fox was Florida State wanted him badly, and UCF was able to keep him away. But of course, Florida State, as the committee says, basically a G5 team, undefeated, can't make the playoffs. Sad, but that's another part of this that makes it so cool. Is it's not like they're just skimming the very bottom of 4-stars available to pump up their class ranking. This is very much they're going out there and competing against very good teams.
Yeah, and I think so. The two things. There's the one thing is I was going to bring this up because I'm drinking out of my UCF West Virginia cup from that game. I think that was funny that I just happened to be doing that. And it wasn't a conscious decision where I was like, oh, he's going to flip to West Virginia. Let me get this cup out. I was just like, oh, this is kind of weird. Shout out to the artists who made these. They're pretty cool. They did the games this year.
Which I do have to say really quickly that some West Virginia fans and UCF fans were fighting on Twitter, and UCF fans were like, we don't care. And some West Virginia fans were like, we literally demolished you in your home stadium. And what I have to say to that is fair. It's like, that's totally fair.
I don't like West Virginia fans, though. I will say that. I think they're the program that I'm really going to start hating.
Yeah, because they're just really annoying. But like, I like.
I mean, I'm being and it's credit to them for the way they traveled for that game. But being in that environment with so many West Virginia fans around me and them having success, it's always gonna be annoying. I guess any fan base that would have been annoying, but they just really got on my nerves that day. So
I've never seen a fan base have that much of a preference. That much of a presence in the bounce.
They did care. They did care who won the game.
I mean, they got. and I'm talking all the way back to like Miami in 2009 or like Texas in 2000. They had a lot of fans.
Well, so the other thing I was going to say was on that point of like going head to head with these teams and getting these recruits that you just would not have seen them get before. Like even the fact that you brought up to me before we got on the podcast, like before we started recording, just they dipped into Texas and got a 4-star running back in Frankie Arthur. Like,
where did that come from?
Have ever happened? Yeah, like how did this happen? And yeah, it's a bizarre reality that we now live in with UCF recruiting.
Not only did they randomly go into Texas to get Frankie, like I said to you before we started, how did that relationship even start? Like where was what? I don't know, but I'm happy it happened.
Cam Martin, I don't know.
Cam Martin is a god, and UCF needs to pay him all the money that exists in the world. They also need to pay. They just need to pay because I was going to say Kenny Martin also needs a lot of money. All the assistants just need a ton of money. Yeah. But not only that they got Frankie Arthur, but they got him in a class that already included Stacey Gage. Already on a roster that's stacked with running backs, and that RJ Harvey might be coming back. They have Tavion Swint committed in 2025 for now, at least. I don't know how that one happened, but that's another really hilarious one.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess we can just start listing off guys, which like, oh, I'm excited about him. Like Walt Claire Flynn is in the second highest rated recruit in this class. And believe he tweeted the highest rated O lineman they've ever gotten.
By like
And
a
I
lot.
can't sit here. I can't sit here for like the last couple of years and be like, oh, they're just building this offensive line through the portal. I hate this. Like, start building it through recruiting and not make him like one of the first names. I'm excited about him because I don't know. I don't, you know, way more about the hit rates and stuff like that. But I feel like an offensive line, like an offensive lineman, a guy this big, I feel like he could be in the mix. Like if they need him to play next year.
So the offensive line hit rate is on the lower side for
Okay.
positions with blue chippers. I don't totally know why that is because like the highest is defensive line. Like I don't know if it's just
Hmm.
because if you're just most of the blue chippers at defensive line are just so huge and it's like just
Yeah.
size and athleticism translates. But either way, I think Walt Claire is gonna be very good. I mean,
Yeah.
he's the number 19 interior offensive lineman in the country. So number 18 interior offensive lineman in the country. So pretty sweet. And I think
Quite
that
good.
it's funny, we never really heard about other teams for him because he's been really locked down with UCF. But if I remember right back in the day, the team that was also showing interest in him was A&M, and he picked UCF and they backed off pretty quick. So yeah,
Crazy.
he's one to be excited for. Can I shout out? I'll shout out one.
Yeah.
How are we just gonna go back and forth and shout out
Yeah,
players?
sure. Let's go
Okay,
back. Let's go back and forth.
Kylan Fox.
Yeah.
You never know because skill players can be a little iffy, but he is just such an exciting and athletic tight end, and I think that UCF has really shown how much they want to feature tight ends like that. I think we saw that a bit with Randy Pittman this year, and the idea of moving into this world where they have both Randy and Kylan who might both be really good at the same time. I just feel like this offense has the potential to be so freaking fun. And he's a guy who, especially given the depth at tight end, he's a guy who I bet we are going to see next year. I really do think so.
Yeah. I'm gonna skip down the list actually and bring up a guy we haven't talked about much because he just committed not long ago is Marcus Downs.
Yeah, late
He was, I
addition.
believe, the number one D lineman in South Carolina, if that's correct. I don't know. That's just a big. Like, he's a huge. He's listed on 247. I know this is always a little bit of playing around with numbers, but he listed at 6'6", 285. Like coming into college around those numbers is insane. And I'm always going to be happy about guys on the defensive front. So that's a cool one that I think he just committed like what was it last week, right?
Yeah, he was a
Yeah.
super late addition. I also should point out that we've been talking literally entirely about the 4 stars. This is a deep class with a lot of
Yeah.
really good guys who are not 4 stars who are going to be good. So the cutoff for 247 composite for 4 stars is 89 or higher. They have 3 guys who are higher than 88, who are also borderline 4 stars, who are 3 stars. That's EJ
Yeah.
Colson, Christian Peterson, and Marcus Downs. You just mentioned. This is a deep class, guys. It's just this is a deep class. I
The
can't
lowest
believe how
rated
many high
recruit's
level guys there are.
84.
That's
Like the lowest
crazy.
rated one's 84.
I
Um,
just,
it's
yeah.
bizarre.
And okay, I'll flip back. I'm going to shout out 2 guys at once. They're bringing in 2 potentially very good quarterbacks in the same class since EJ Colson reclassified. That's EJ Colson and Riley Trujillo. Either of
Yeah.
those guys, 2 or 3 years from now, we might be talking about as like UCF's next big thing. They both have a ton of potential. They're both Gus style QBs to an extent. They're both larger. They can both play really well. And we're in this scenario now where if UCF can, we talked about this on our last pod, if UCF can just nail the 2024 quarterback situation, you can go into spring of 2025 with Dylan Risk, with Riley Trujillo, and EJ Colson, 3 really high potential guys, and just figure out who's best and go from there. That's they're
Yeah.
somehow not this season, but next season, 2025, in a really enviable spot at quarterback right now. Now, I'm sure Gus can find a way to mess that up. We'll see what happens, but for now, pretty enviable spot.
Yeah. You talk about 2 quarterbacks. I'll just again go back to the 2 running backs. Like the fact that they're able to bring in 2 high level running backs like that is crazy. And they're building up an insanely deep running back room. If they can somehow still hang on to Tavion Swint in 2025, like that's going to be bizarre having
Yeah.
just like that much talent. And they've always had good running backs. That's the thing. But like for as far as recruiting as far as all that, like it's never been like that. So like it could be at a completely different level than we've even been used to, which is crazy.
All right, I'll shout out one more, and then we can actually talk about the bowl game because we also
Yeah.
have to do that.
Yeah.
Quay Birdsong. Why am I shouting out Quay
Okay.
Birdsong? There's 2 reasons.
Name.
Nope. Okay, I guess there's 3 reasons.
Oh.
Yes, I like his name a lot. There's 2 other reasons.
Linebacker.
Linebacker, 4-star linebacker. Actually, any kind of linebacker I'm down for. What's the other reason?
Flipped him from Cincinnati.
Flipped him from Cincinnati. Quay Birdsong hits the
Yeah.
trifecta. Flipped from our hated rival Cincinnati. Is a linebacker who exists, and awesome name.
Yeah, I think I have to probably shout him out because he's the highest rated recruit in the class. We talked about him a little bit. Jalen Hayward, like
Oh,
that's
yeah. Okay. Jalen
we
Hayward,
didn't
we
even
also
talk
probably
about
should have
him.
touched on.
So
So,
yeah,
update
there's
on
just
Addison Williams said they're going to use him as a corner, which I find interesting because I think that initially when he signed, people were talking about him as a safety. So I thought that was notable. I also want to point out that UCF had some press conferences today, and Darren Hinshaw and Addison Williams spoke separately. Darren Hinshaw was asked about the play because, once they sign, the coaches can actually talk about them. You can't talk about them until
yeah,
they sign. Darren Hinshaw was asked, and he stopped the reporter and said, "Let me stop you there. I'm not going to talk about the recruits. Gus is having a press conference later in the day, so he'll cover all that." Addison was asked and was like, "What information do you need?" And it was just dishing on like every guy and where they're going to use him, what the recruiting process was like. Which, you know, I've always liked Addison Williams a lot, even as the fan base has wanted him gone. And he was talking about the recruitment of Jalen Hayward, who was committed to Georgia for a while, and he was asked about how that went, and he said, "Well, you know, Jalen let us know that he was committing to Georgia, and we said that's great. Doesn't change anything. We're not going to stop recruiting you. That's good for you. Congrats." And he said they just stayed on him, and they never let up. They just acted like he was still uncommitted, and that eventually paid off, and they got the flip.
Yeah, we got that far in. We were like, oh yeah, Jalen Hayward also the top
highlight of the class. Yeah.
That's how deep it is. It's crazy. It's an awesome. I mean, it's an awesome class. I'm really excited, and would love to see which of these guys kind of start to get the roles next year that like Braden Marshall, John Walker, like those kind of guys, where they weren't like every down players, but they kind of by the end of the year were becoming like clear that like this guy's going to play, like he's going to be.
And we see those every year. Like 2021, it was Xavier Townsend was out there a lot, and Nakai Martinez was out there a lot. Those guys both became full-time starters this season.
Yeah.
I'm quite certain that John Walker is going to be a full-time starter next season. I think Randy Pittman probably has that locked up too, depending on whether you or not you believe Alec Holler was making jokes this week when he declared he has another year of eligibility, which I checked and he does. He actually does have another year of eligibility.
Matt Michelle confirmed that too with the Orlando Sentinel. Like he also said, yeah, like it was a weird day, a weird moment because.
Did you watch the video of him talking about it? He is like they ask him about his UCF career ending, and he smirks and is like, "I have another year of eligibility." And it was kind of sounded like a joke, but then they clarify with him like 3 times, and he's like, "No, I do. I'll decide after the bowl what I want to do." And I guess after the press conference ended, the media present were told he was joking, and then some time went by, and then it was like, "Oh no, wait, we're not sure if he was joking or not. He might have been telling the truth." So we don't know. Apparently, Alec Holler could maybe come back, but either way, I think Randy Pittman is a surefire major contributor for next season. So
yeah. The other thing we had to talk about in this section, which we completely didn't. So it's good they're talking about tight ends because that's what reminded me of it. But there's potential for Alec Holler to come back. There's Randy Pittman, there's Kylan Fox, and then they got some transfer tight ends this week. One of them today was Michigan State tight end Evan Morris. And then I'm blanking on the other kid from, was it Eastern Washington or Eastern Michigan? Eastern Kentucky.
Eastern Kentucky.
It was Reese Adkins. Reese Adkins. Yeah. And then also today they got Cincinnati running back Miles Montgomery. So we can spend more time on those next week if we want, or in the future.
There will be more portal updates next week, I'm sure. So maybe we'll do just a very portal-centric pod. We'll talk about KJ Jefferson committing to Miami.
He's going to commit on like Christmas or something, isn't he?
Just to clarify, that was a joke. That hasn't happened yet. UCF's going head-to-head with Miami for a quarterback, and they might work out because he's not Miami's top quarterback target right now. So it depends on what some other guys do, but that's.
I just want to know at this point. I'm tired of it.
Sick of it, man. It's also if they don't get KJ, I have no earthly idea what happens now. Like all the quarterbacks are coming off the board. They're running out of time to make something happen. No, apparently Jordan McLeod is not allowed to play for UCF. So
I haven't heard a buzz about him anywhere though.
Like I don't know what's going on. That's very odd.
Very weird. All right, let's jump into the Gasparilla Bowl, which is UCF's third Gasparilla Bowl since 2019.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Correct.
And it snuck up on me, honestly. I keep forgetting that it's happening, which I guess is kind of the state of bowl season or the state of like recruiting being the more exciting thing right now, or the fact that it's Christmas is in 5 days and just busy with that. So yeah, there's a game on Friday night at Raymond James Stadium, UCF and Georgia Tech. It's the Georgia O'Leary Bowl. He's going to be there for the coin toss. And as we discussed, I think when this matchup was announced, he's probably rooting for Georgia Tech.
Let me ask you a question. Is it the Georgia O'Leary Bowl or is it the Brent Key Bowl?
Yeah, the Key Bowl. I have a Key Bowl on my dresser over there. Not my dresser. What is that? Bookshelf.
Let me ask you
that's
what
I thought of. I just thought of I didn't think of a person. I thought of like
you thought of an actual inanimate bowl.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me ask you another question. Is it the Brent Key Bowl or is it the Christian Leary Bowl? How far down the list can we get here?
Go for like 200 receiving yards, isn't he?
And I'm going to tweet every single moment of it. I will literally be there to write a story about Christian Leary's performance and nothing else.
Meanwhile,
I'll never get over that.
Meanwhile, Whittemore is going to be on the sideline doing nothing, and the other receiver, I can't even remember the other receivers at this point. We're already past 2023, and I'm blanking on their names. What was the one?
Magwood, Corey Gamage.
Corey Gamage. I'm forgetting the one that apparently everyone was saying was fat. That was just bizarre situation.
Said he was fat, but yeah.
Well, no, they said he was out of shape.
He led Marshall in receiving yards for 2 years.
Yeah, no, I know it's crazy.
There has to be something else there we don't know.
I've just decided to go over the top and just say, yeah, everyone was just saying he was fat because I think it's like I don't know what happened. There was a crazy situation, but yeah, the big thing I think here is like it really struck me today was like, oh, this game decides whether or not UCF finishes it above 500 or not. I don't think I like that.
Yeah, this would be, if they do, it'll be their 7th straight season finishing with a winning record, which is pretty damn impressive. But I have good news. No one cares.
Yeah.
Apparently.
That's the thing is it's a weird matchup to preview because no one's even talking about it. I don't know what to expect at all. Like, I don't know. We're not going to hear about opt-outs ever from Gus, I don't think.
No, I don't think there are any.
There aren't any, you think?
Yeah, I don't think so. Unless there's like a shock, I don't believe anyone who's not in the portal is expected to not play as of now. Now, that doesn't mean we get out there and then Javon's missing. That could be the case, but I believe everyone made
Javon's the one.
I know. We all know it would be Javon if it's someone, but I believe everyone went to Tampa of some of these players we were wondering about. So we'll see.
The other thing I wasn't clear on, and I haven't watched all the press conference or anything. I just saw a clip of JRP talking about Georgia Tech's defense.
Yeah.
And he mentioned like, oh, they've got some talented guys. They've got some guys that opted out, but I know there's going to be some guys who step up for them, just like there are going to be guys who step up for us. And when he said that, I was like,
well, they're missing Corey Thornton on defense. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's true.
Georgia Tech's their starting edge and one of their starting cornerbacks are out. So those are their opt-outs.
Positive for me. I don't know. I'm glad. Cool.
It's fine. The thing about
just win the game. That's all I really care. Like, I don't care if Georgia Tech is playing. If it would have been Duke with no quarterback and no head coach and we would have won, I wouldn't have been like, oh no, it was a Mickey Mouse win. I'm like, no, they went 7-6. Cool.
But the thing is, Mickey Mouse win. We've just moved into an era where bowl games just don't matter, and it's going to get even worse next year when there's a 12-team CFP because the fact that it's already where it is. I mean,
it's sad, but I also don't care because
that's what I'm saying. I can't.
College football.
I can't be. We're at the point where it's like, unless it's a matchup that really has some heat behind it, like when it was UCF Florida, like when it's just a random matchup, it's hard to. And I think what's really done it, because people are blaming a lot of stuff of, it's playoff it's the playoff intrigue or fans don't care or whatever. I think what really did it is the opt-outs in the transfer portal, because it's stopped. Like, it's very rare for the team that runs out of the tunnel for your bowl to feel like the same team you were watching for 12 games because there's so much turnover at that point. I think I said this on a past podcast, but I was kind of marveling at, I remembered in 2018, Will Greer opted out of, I think it was the Citrus Bowl with West Virginia. And it was the first time a quarterback had ever opted out of a bowl game. And everyone was like, whoa. And it was headline news. And this cycle, Bo Nix announced he was playing in the Fiesta Bowl. And that was headline news, that he was planning to play. And it's just, they kind of feel like these weird in-between games now where it's not really quite what your roster was the whole season. It's not really quite what it's going to be next year. So it's just kind of hard to
remember that 2020 Florida team and the opt-outs, like that how that was just their bowl game was, I believe, was what the Sugar Bowl, wasn't it?
Yeah, and no one played.
No one was playing. I think Kyle Trask was playing, was getting like absolutely killed.
Do you remember Dan Mullen's infamous comment from the post game?
Yeah, it was something about like that wasn't the 2020.
He said that was the first game of the 2021 season. That wasn't the 2020 season, which was a stupid comment, but we are moving towards that. So they're just fun. I'm excited to watch UCF play a football game. I hope they win. I'm not going to be in shambles if they lose. The downside is I
might be in shambles if they lose for a couple of days.
I'll be annoyed, just like last year. We were in a bad mood, then we got over it. I mean, the truth is, it is funny though, because even though they don't matter a ton, and it's hard to figure out who's going to win, they still kind of set the tone for the fan base for the next few months. If they win, it's all sunshine and rainbows. What a great way to close out the season. Won 4 of their final 5 games. If they lose, everyone's going to be pouty and like Gus can't get it done, and it'll be until spring ball before we get out of that. So let me tell you why we can't predict this game and why I'm not even going to bother. Is because you can't predict bowl games. They're neutral sites. Bunch of players are missing. The teams haven't played in a month. None of their results ever make sense in bowl games. My favorite already this season was Ohio and Georgia Southern played in a bowl earlier this year because the bowl games have started. Ohio was missing everybody. Parker Navarro got the start at quarterback because Ohio's quarterback had opted out. Their starting running back had opted out. Their wide receivers had opted out. Georgia Southern was an entirely intact team. Ohio blew them out. Nothing makes sense in bowl games. Yeah, so I have no idea what's going to happen. Who knows? UCF might win. Maybe they'll lose. Who can tell?
Is there anything else to talk about? We just went through like, no, there's not. Give us a score prediction after that statement you just said. Give us a score prediction.
I have no. UCF wins 38-31. I don't know. Georgia Tech's rushing offense is pretty good, and UCF's rushing defense has been pretty bad all year, and I don't think anything is going to change that right now. So there you go.
Yeah, let me go UCF. I don't know. 41. No, UCF. Yeah, UCF 41. Georgia Tech 35. I
nice.
Know.
That'd be fun. I'd be down for that high scoring game. It's going to be like 17-10. You know, it's just going to be
probably. I mean,
log.
I don't know. I just I can't even remember. It's a weird thing how like I don't know if it's this. I've just been so much busier this year between the last regular season game and the well, I guess last year there was the AAC championship game, but it's just weird. Like I feel like I haven't seen UCF play in forever.
It
And
feels
like
like it's been a super long time. Yeah.
even the last game, which I wasn't able to do the podcast for, I watched like the first 3 quarters of that game, and I just don't remember it. Like I don't remember how
Yeah.
they looked in that game at all, which is weird.
Of the
So I don't
Houston.
know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what they're gonna look like on in 2 days, but
It is a little. Wow, look at me. I was about to say it's a little sentimental because it's JRP's last game. Look how far I've come, guys. But it is, there are a lot of guys who we've been watching for, like Lokahi Paole not being with UCF
yeah,
next year is going to be weird. He's been a key contributor for so long. Like John Rice being gone is going to be odd just because it's been a couple years. Alec Holler has been here forever. It might be RJ Harvey's last game. It might be Kobe and Javon's. I mean, there are
yeah,
a lot of guys who have been really, really good players and were a part of this transition era that we might be seeing for the last time. And I don't want to make it out like fans are. I feel like it's weird. It feels less like fans are uninterested in this game as they just don't care as much about how it goes. Like there's still a ton of UCF fans going to the game. Like they've sold
yeah.
out their
No,
allotment and they sold out their additional allotment. I think
Georgia Tech
fans,
did too, I believe.
yeah, it's going to
So
be, it's ESPN called it one of the only bowls where both teams actually care, which is kind of true because these are two of the only teams whose goals were both to make bowls and both did it and are matched up. So that's kind
yeah,
of funny and we'll see what happens. But it's just, I put up a poll earlier this week. I said, which do you care more about going this week, the recruiting class or the bowl game? And yeah, 289 person sample size, 70% said the recruiting class, which I thought was kind of funny because I think like even 4 or 5 years ago, that would have been entirely flipped. It would have been like 90% the bowl. So it's funny
yeah.
how things
No,
change, but it'll be
that's
fun. I hope
crazy.
UCF wins. I don't think a loss really affects anything. It'd be cool to brag about having another winning season. That would be cool.
Yeah,
That streak going, but whatever happens, happens. It'll be fun no matter what.
yeah. I think so. Well, that's not true. I don't think it will be fun no matter what. There's a very real scenario where it's not a fun game at all.
As I said that, I was like, that's not true. Why
That's
did I
not
say that?
true.
If they get blown out, it'll be bad. I think if they lose close, we'll just move on into the offseason.
Yeah,
I think if Georgia Tech just crushes them, then people are going to be in a very bad
yeah.
mood until probably July. We'll see.
A lot of people are just like, why did I even bother? Like
That'll be the thing. Why did I go to this game? And you
yeah.
want to defend your hometown away from your hometown because UCF has quite the presence in Tampa. I
I
tweeted
want
this
them. I
earlier
want them
too.
to defend my hometown. So yes,
Bailey's hometown, and it's going to be my hometown for the next 2 days. So
it's true.
that's how that works, right?
Yeah,
It is
sure.
weird. The last season UCF did not play a game at Raymond James was 2017.
Well, who was it? I think it was probably was it Brandon Helwig who put it to Tremont Morris Brash. He's like, every year of your career, you've played a game there.
Oh my God, that's
And he was
true,
like,
isn't
"Oh, I
it?
didn't even think about it like that."
Wow,
And
that's
then he
actually
brought up
crazy.
how he scored a touchdown in the Gasparilla Bowl as a freshman against Marshall, which I do remember. I remember being there cold and rainy and miserable, but they won the game, so it was fun.
I was in the press
But
box, so can't relate.
yeah, no,
Warm and
it doesn't
toasty.
surprise me. Same thing as the Oklahoma State game.
I'm just feeding the narrative. Friend of the show, Wild Bill, always says that I'm probably just in the press box, just like looking down on everyone, judgy, like sipping a coffee like a supervillain. Like, yes.
Yeah. Also, a friend of the pod, my girlfriend says the same thing. She's like, when she was like mad. She was mad when it was pouring during the Oklahoma State game. We're getting soaked, and she's like, Christian's probably just up there, just like laughing at everyone. And
Why is
I
that
was
my
like,
reputation? Like, why would I do that?
I was like, I don't. I was like, I don't know. I was like, he's either laughing at everyone or I was like, he does kind of give fans credit a lot of times, like when it's like bad weather, like fans like stick through it. And I was like, he's probably tweeting something about that. So
I
I
think
did
this
kind
is
of.
why
I
I
kind
think
of
it's
defended you.
interesting. I think the vast majority of fans would hate being in the press box because it's nothing like
Oh yeah,
whatever
no,
you think
it's
being at a game is. It's like an office. Like it's not like some hyped up atmosphere, you know?
yeah, that's true. I mean, that's honestly, it's why I stopped covering games like
Yeah.
for UCF. Is like I wanted to be in the atmosphere, and I sometimes regret that because it's like it's more of a tiring experience. I feel like when you go to the game, like sitting in the sun or whatever, just being uncomfortable for a few hours. But yeah, no, I don't know. I'm in the press
It's
box for Bucks games
definitely
all the time, and it's just a different experience.
I love the way we do it though, because I think it makes the podcast better. Is that we have you who is like on the ground, like actually like in the crowd and like fan atmosphere and all
Boots
that
on the
stuff. And
ground.
and then I'm able to, when you're covering the game, it's like you have access to more information and things like
Right.
that. And it just kind
You
of I feel
can
like it
see
makes the podcast.
replays. You
Yeah,
can
we can
see
see
things. You can see the
replays.
whole field from up there. I can see
Yeah.
it from just the corner of the end zone. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
we
good
get
thing.
stats given to us and everything. So it's like I feel like it balances the podcast well. We get both sides.
I think so. All right, cool. Let's jump into the football news real quick. A lot of more just like the season wrap up stuff. John Walker was named a freshman All-American by ESPN. Phil Steele did his honors for the year. There were All-American honorable mentions were Javon Baker, RJ Harvey, and Tremont Morris Brash. First team All Big 12 was Baker, Jason Johnson, Tremont Morris Brash, and that was the first team. Second team All Big 12, RJ Harvey, Kobe Hudson, Lokahi Paule, and Lee Hunter. And then third team All American as a punt returner was Xavier Townsend. couple more portal entries, KD McDaniel and Dallas Corbett. I don't think either of those are really big surprises.
I think
And
they're
then
both still with the team too. I think they said that
oh,
this week.
okay.
They're
Oh
just
yeah, they
safely
did.
through the bowl.
Yeah. So that's cool. I don't know. I feel like that's a nice thing for like them to just be with the team until they find a new home.
I'm sure there will be a couple more portal entries that maybe we'll feel more significantly about, but it's crazy that we're this late in the cycle and they have only lost Corey Thornton as far as players that
Yeah.
you actually don't want to lose. I guess you can sort of throw Jordan McDonald in there, but he wasn't contributing, so it's a little different. They've lost one contributor. That's crazy.
Yeah. Last piece of news is sad news. Former UCF wide receiver Ryan O'Keefe announced that he had to medically retire from football, which is just it's bad. It sucks to see that. And he took like a bad hit, and I think he said he like lost all feeling in his body with that hit. And he's playing for Boston College this year, and they guess it was revealed that he had spinal stenosis, which was like the thing in his like a spinal condition that makes it extremely dangerous for him to play football again. So yeah, it sucks. I mean, he had a fun career at UCF, especially he was the 2021 offense, and then the iconic moment of him doing the peace sign against Florida is always going to be. I feel like that's going to be like on the walls in UCF's building forever. So always have fond memories of him as a player and as a person. I just remember that season was the our time on ESPN. I remember they had like a feature on him and his family, and I just remember coming away from that being like, that's a good kid and a good family. So
yeah,
sucks that he can't play anymore, but I mean, all for him being healthy and not risking that. So
yeah,
sad news.
Like you said, that was just awful news. And he was kind of like probably UCF's like the star of UCF's team in 2021. I mean, he meant a lot to the fan base for a long time, and like you, it was just kind of he had that injury happen earlier this year, and I remember it at the time, and I just kind of forgotten about it and had assumed things. I didn't even know if he played again since then or what. So that was sort of gutting to get that news, but hoping for the best for him, whatever comes next, whether that's coaching or something else. Hopefully he can, find a good career for himself. It would be cool to see him as a coach. We were talking about today, Derek King just got hired as SMU's quarterbacks coach. Like we're just getting old. Guys that we watched play not that long ago are coaches all of a sudden.
Even McKenzie being a GA or whatever he was with Tennessee, it was like seeing him in like a coach's like even just the jacket or whatever it was like that's a weird.
He might picture. Like as soon as next season might have a legit coaching job outside of being a GA or an analyst. So that's gonna be weird to see.
All right, we'll do game of the week real quick and then wrap up with tweet of the week. But the only game remaining this week, other than the bowl game, is UCF men's basketball on Thursday, hosting FAMU. UCF men's basketball 7-3 so far. Honestly, it's been a weird year where I have not been able to watch them like at any point yet this year.
I've watched 2 games so far, which is pretty low.
It's just been kind of a whatever, like nothing, kind of just so far. It's like, oh yeah, they won, or they had a frustrating loss. That was to Stetson. Was it Stetson?
Yeah, Stetson. That's the only bad one.
Yeah, and then they lost a close one to Ole Miss.
Happened to be one of the 2 games. I've watched 3. But it's also things like they were playing Maine the other night, and I turned the game on and I watched it for about 10 minutes, and I was just kind of like, what am I doing?
I did the same thing with one of the women's games the other day. Like I forget who they were playing, but it was like they were up by like 30, and I was like, I could watch the rest of this, or I could just watch a rerun of something. Like I was like, I don't know. Like
it's just like, guys, I expend so much of my brain power every day on UCF athletics, like to a degree that is not even remotely healthy. It's like I need to pick my battles. I need a night where I'm not watching a UCF sporting event, and I'm trying to do that for myself at this point.
All right, let's do tweet of the week.
Tweet of the week. We don't have a tweet of the week. We have a donation race of the week that I wanted to use this space to talk about, and that is that UCF and the Kingdom have something interesting going on, and that is that they have like a poll in the form of donations on the Kingdom's website to decide whether or not the freaking Frankie Valli song will be played next year. And you guys will know
the results of this by the time you listen, possibly.
You probably will. You can donate to keep the song, or you can donate to kill the song. And I just wanted to take this moment to say a couple things. One, awesome promotion idea by the Kingdom, UCF, whoever come up with that. Like, my God, it's free money. It's also funny because that is such a contentious debate over such a small thing. But I don't think I realized how much I cared about it until they put up that poll, because I immediately gave $50. Like, I'm like, get this song out of here.
I gave 25 to vote against it, and then I tweeted the other day. I was like, there are not enough people to like that are for this song to make this a thing. But this is smart of them, and it's going to work on me. Apparently, there are. Yeah, or maybe it's insane. I'm like, until I saw how much or how many people are for the song, that's when I really realized how much I wanted to go. And I was like, these people are crazy.
So like, that was the honestly, second thing.
I don't hate the song. I hate the song in a football atmosphere. I guess the song's whatever.
That's what I was going to say. My actual hot take is I think that song hurt them this season. I know that's a wild lunatic thing to say, but it just saps the atmosphere. Like, it's just not a hype song at all. Like, you want the crowd loud and rowdy and like, hell yeah, not that crap. Like, get that out of a damn stadium. Like, you wonder why the home atmosphere is falling off, like stupid music. So the second thing I wanted to say was, if you were one of the people who donated to keep the song, which is a lot, because as of this recording, $3,002 have been raised to kill the song. I love that they literally said kill the song on their website.
Yeah, kill it.
$2,781 to keep it. So it's very close.
Oh, it's more of a gap than last time I saw.
If you voted to keep the song, I don't want you to ever listen to this podcast again. Get lost. Like,
come on, we need listeners.
Like, no, get out. I'm serious.
Honestly, I thought about this because I didn't know if we were going to talk about it, but I thought about this earlier. If you are one of those people that voted to keep it, let me know why. Like, what's the argument for keeping that song?
By the way, I'm joking. Obviously, keep listening to the podcast, and we can agree to disagree. And I'm sure that there are other things we have in common. But man, you were not one of my favorite listeners.
Can't believe it. I can't believe it.
I wonder
because it's that close.
Is it an age gap thing or not? I feel like it isn't, oddly enough, even though the song's older. Yeah, I think it's just some people have really bad music taste.
I'll say it again, like, it's a fine song, but not for that atmosphere.
Okay,
like,
I'll say it. It's not even a good song. Football atmosphere.
Play that song at your donor gala on a Friday night before the game. I don't care. Just don't play it in the stadium.
You did this little dismissive hand wave and you said it like your donor. Yeah, the people who give UCF all their money and let them get good players.
If you guys are the ones that are enjoying it, go enjoy it on your own time. Not in my football stadium.
How much money do I need to give to the Kingdom to just pick the songs, like all of them? Because this is not a hard job. Like, well, I'm probably insulting the hell out of someone right now who creates that playlist, so I'll apologize. Probably. But it feels like every stadium, there's like 6 songs that you play and the crowd gets hyped. Just play the hype songs. Don't play this stuff, okay? I don't like this. I don't like when they play Sweet Caroline. I hate that. And they don't really play that at UCF. But other stadiums play it. Annoys me.
I don't.
Can I give my really hot take now?
Yeah.
Really hot take? I hate that stupid Knights Will Never Die song that they play.
I don't hate that one.
I hate that one. Get it out of here. Get out of here.
I don't
You play a whole song so people can yell Knights.
People sing along to it.
I don't care. It doesn't fit the atmosphere.
It's the problem I have is, well, that one at least they've been doing for I don't know how many years now, but like this Frankie Valli one is just such a manufactured thing that Terry manufactured.
Yep.
It's just so fake and not a real thing.
I need to know the backstory. Like, did he literally go find the person who's in charge of what they play during the games and was like, please put in this song because I like it? It feels like a thing he'd do. I don't know if that's how it happened, but it feels like a thing he'd do.
So
as he was warming his hands in his office over the fire he'd made from the pewter uniforms he'd had burned, he was like, I want this song played during all games from now on. But we're so close, guys. I was going to say keep donating, but we'll know the results by the time most of you are listening, so it doesn't matter. But hope you donated to the right side. If not, I'm temporarily angry with you. So just have that on your conscience.
Be on the right side of history is all I'll say.
Be on the right side of history.
We'll find out.
The history books we'll talk about this day, not for UCF's recruiting class, but for the Frankie Valli War.
It's possible. All right, yeah, let's get out of here. We'll be back on Friday night with a post-game podcast, our last post-game podcast for 8 months.
Sad.
Pretty sad, yeah. But we'll be back on Friday to talk about the UCF Georgia Tech game. Whatever happens there, I really don't know what to expect. We just talked about that. It's going to be hopefully a good time. Hopefully UCF wins and we can all go into the festive period. Well, I guess it's already been the festive period, but go all into Christmas Day with some smiles on our faces because of UCF. But yeah, we'll be back. And until then, you can find us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at @ByCASimmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. Thank you guys so much for being with us, and we will talk to you on Friday.
Bye, everybody.